The Virginia Horse Industry Board and the Virginia Christmas Tree Growers Association are proud sponsors of Virginia farming.
This program's brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau. Large or small, Virginia farmers work year-round to help put food on your table. And Farm Bureau works year-round to help farmers and all Virginians. Farming, it's all good. To learn more, go to vafarmbureau.org.
Hi everybody, welcome to Virginia Farming. I'm Amy Rocher. This week we travel to Gordonsville and talk to author Audrey Levitino about her book, Woman Powered Farm. Then Mark Viette shares tips on spring cleaning in the garden. We'll also have the Ag Calendar and a Minute in the Field video. All this plus the Ag News of the Week on this edition of Virginia Farming. Mosquito season will soon be in full swing, and the state veterinarian's office is urging all horse owners to check with their vets about a vaccination schedule for mosquito-borne illnesses like West Nile virus and Eastern equine encephalitis. Timely annual vaccinations have been shown to decrease these diseases drastically. Horse owners are also urged to check about rabies vaccinations as well. Well, another season about to be in full swing is strawberry season. The cool spring temperatures have made harvesting a little later than normal, but they will be worth the wait. According to VDAX, cooler conditions can help make strawberries extra delicious, and many farmers are expecting a bumper crop of berries this season. For a list of farmers markets and pick your own strawberry farms, visit virginiagrown.com. Well, no cattle farmer should head into summer without a heat mitigation plan. In this segment, Cindy Campbell reports on how experts suggest to put that kind of plan in place.
Hot, humid, still. Those weather conditions can cause stress for the animals and the managers.
Heat stress is something we worry about a lot. We don't deal with very often.
A little planning now can help cattle feeders deal with those days later this year, says retired Nebraska beef extension specialist Terry Mater. He developed best practices to guide strategies for those few problem days that may come.
If we're going to maximize the genetic potential of these animals, whether it's for performance or carcass trait, we really need to make sure that the animal is comfortable and content. And to do that, we have to manage the environmental stress. And so these mitigation strategies are really designed to do that.
These suggestions available in the Educator's Corner at cabpartners.com help producers recognize the signs of and conditions that typically cause heat stress. They also provide options for helping the animals through those days.
If the nighttime temperatures get below 70, they can cool themselves off enough to be able to get through the next day. So what I look at as a feed yard manager is, are we going to have prolonged nights where we don't get that cool, followed by days that we get very warm? Those are the times you really worry about it. In those times, we tend to split our animals out into more pens so that they have more access to water, more access to shade, more access to room to be able to cool themselves off a little bit better.
Burkholder is an example of what Mater emphasizes. Choosing several of the strategies together is the best plan. Facilities upgrades are part of the key to greater comfort, but feeders can also shift the time of day they work or move cattle.
The other thing we can do is change the time we feed cattle, particularly feedlot cattle, and feed more of the ration at night or in the evening feeding as opposed to the morning feeding. And what we're really trying to do there is that when you feed an animal, peak metabolic heat load occurs 3 to 4 hours after they eat.
At Will Feed, they recently installed shades as another tool in their heat stress prevention plan.
We put them in the side of our pens, kind of up on side of our mounds, so the animals can get out of the sun. They can still have wind and air movement to keep them cool. And so what we found is they spend time at the feed bunk eating, they spend time at the water tank drinking, and then they'll go and rest underneath the shades.
It's a long-term investment, but one Burkholder is already seeing dividends on. I'm Cindy Campbell.
Thanks, Cindy. Another commodity seeing high dividends is Virginia aquaculture. The 2014 Virginia Shellfish Aquaculture Crop Reporting Survey showed farmers selling $55.9 million in oysters and clams last year. That represents an increase of 14% in total revenue for clam growers and 33% for oyster growers. The hard clams industry sold an all-time high of $243 million. Well, Virginia farmer Audrey Levatino has written a book, Woman Powered Farm, and it reads much like a manual for a self-sufficient lifestyle. We'll talk to Audrey next on Ag Insights. Today we're in Gordonsville and we're visiting the farm of farmer and author Audrey Levatino. Audrey, thank you so much for having us out today.
Well, I'm so glad you could come. Thank you.
Well, it's a beautiful setting here.
Well, thank you very much. It's a little dreary, misty today, but yeah.
Now, you're an author, but you're also a farmer. But I read where you were actually an English teacher to begin with. So how did you get to be a farmer?
Well, we had bought this property. When we first moved here, I was still an English teacher by profession and looked for a job doing that and found one. But after a few years, it got harder and harder for me to leave the farm. There was so much to do, and it was just such a great experience being here that I started thinking, well, there must be some way that I can do something with this farm and maybe make a living at it. I was also intoxicated with the idea of selling things at the farmer's market. So that kind of led to me making a career switch when I turned 40, and I had the milestone, and deciding to be a flower farmer.
Okay. So how long have you been farming?
Gosh, it has been, I've farmed while I was still teaching, so probably about 12, 13 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how big is the farm?
The farm itself is 23 acres, but 10 of that is woods. Okay. So the part that's actually farmed is only about 1.5 acres.
Okay. Well, I see a lot of animals around, but what do you raise here?
Mostly I grow cut flowers. That's where I make the money that allows me to do this farming thing that pays the bills for the plants and the animals. But we also have chickens, for free-range chickens for their eggs, and we've got a couple of donkeys and a couple of llamas, which people always ask me, what do you do with them? Well,
so what do you do with them?
Mostly just admire them from afar, but they do provide manure, which is great when you have a farm. We do a lot of composting, and so that's a great source of manure for us. Also, they help keep our fields in check, so they eat the field, which is another great thing. And also they are calming and soothing, meditative sorts of animals to have around.
They're sweet.
Yes, they are.
And they were very interested in us when we came in this morning.
Very curious animals. They love people. The donkeys especially love children. When we have farm tours out here, the donkeys are always happy to let the children shove grass in their face and pet them and pull on their ears, and it's like, wow, I never knew they were so gentle.
So you guys, do you do some farm tours to bring kids out and help educate?
We do, yeah, we do. We through our city market, they have farm tours every year, and we're one of the farms on that tour, and so families and people come to visit the farm all day long. It's really fun.
Okay. So you primarily make your money off of cut flowers.
Yes.
Where do you sell your cut flowers?
At the Charlottesville City Market, and also to local florists and designers. They're always interested in that kind of unique and special flower that you get that can't really be shipped. A lot of flowers that are shipped are stored dry, and some of the best flowers can't be stored dry. So the florists and designers are always very happy to get fresh local flowers. So very nice.
Well, you left your teaching job to become a farmer. How long did it take you to actually become profitable in what you were doing?
That's a good question. Sometimes I feel like I'm still not profitable, even though I'm able to pay my bills and a little bit more than that. Probably about 3 years till I really was making this business sustainable on its own and having enough money left over to help pay other bills around the farm and the house.
So during those years, you probably had a big learning curve. Is that what prompted you to write your book? Your book is called The Woman Powered Farm, first of all, which I think is a great title. So were you prompted to write this book because of your learning curves?
That was certainly one of the motivations. Thinking about my trial and error process, and then being asked by other women that I would run into, and they would say, wow, I would really love to do what you're doing. How did you get into it, and what does it entail? And through answering their questions, beginning to think, wouldn't it be nice to have something that's a little more step by step as a guide and an encouragement. A lot of this book is not simply showing how to do things on a farm, but talking about the process and recognizing other women who are doing it and showing all the different ways you can go about it. There's not just one way, and wanting to spread that information so that other people can take that leap and enjoy what I'm enjoying.
So women in farming has changed over the years. Can you share some of the statistics that you know about women farming?
Well, just in doing the research, one of the main things that I found that was kind of shocking and interesting at the same time was that even though women have been farming for decades, many times they weren't counted on the census because they were a wife. Even though they jointly owned the farm, it was only the man who was considered the proprietor, and so he was counted on the census as being the owner. So women weren't counted for a long time, even though they were farming. Another thing to take into consideration is a lot of the women that are farming now don't consider themselves farmers, and they aren't necessarily farmers in the big agricultural sense of the word. They're more artisan or specialty farmers, so they don't count on the census or don't fill in a census, in that sense.
Right.
But the number of women farmers has increased year by year. Right now, they are responsible for, just small women farmers, for about 30% of our food that we eat in this country.
That's amazing.
So it is. It's really, it's fascinating too, because they're small niche markets. It's not huge, like I said, it's not big ag, it's small farms.
Sure.
And big ag is important. I don't want to by any means say that it's not, but it's just fascinating to me that these small farmers are making such a big difference. And that's urban farming, which often doesn't get counted.
Right.
And home farming, where a woman just starts growing for her family and then starts selling at a market. Lots of different ways that
which
it works.
which is kind of what you did. You had
Right.
the interest, you started, and you're like, well, I could probably make some money doing this. Let's give it a shot.
Right.
Now, do you operate your farm by yourself? Is it just you that operates your
It is just
acreage?
me. I have some help. My husband, although he has a full-time job off farm, which pays our mortgage and is a vital part of keeping this a sustainable operation, he does help me with getting new beds set up. Whenever I have, there are a lot of tasks that can't be done by one person. So when I need that double person, 2 people job, he's really there to help me out. And I couldn't do it without him, definitely. I would say that.
Right. But your book is written for women who may need to do things by themselves.
Yes.
Tell our viewers a little bit about what's in your book. I know there's things like felling trees,
Right.
even operating a chainsaw. Give us an idea of some other things that are in your book.
And those are things that, yes, you can do on your own. I still personally, if I'm going to operate the chainsaw, I don't do it when I'm by myself.
Right.
Because anytime you're using power equipment, I think it's a good idea to have someone there, or at least someone that knows that you're out there doing it.
Right, exactly.
So there are step-by-step instructions, and the chainsaw is probably one of the most intimidating tools on the farm, but it's a necessary one. But once you do it a few times,
Sure.
you get more confident, and you don't have to go out and do it all the time.
But it makes you feel good to conquer something like that.
Definitely.
Well, sure, I can
Definitely.
operate a chainsaw. I can do
Right,
that. And
right.
building fences. I mean, that's
Yes.
such an important part of the farm when you've got to rope things off from animals, or just to differentiate from the different crops.
Yes.
And you teach that in your book as well.
Right. Building a fence is, you've got to have fencing if you have a farm. And even if you're in the city, there's going to be some sort of fence that you're going to need to build. And our fences, as you can see, are mostly the kind, just the T-posts and wire. And it just takes time is the main thing. Is don't get frustrated, and give yourself enough time. Have all of your materials with you and ready, so you're not running back and forth to get things.
Right.
And be patient with yourself, and it'll happen.
Is there a story or an excerpt from the book that is one of your favorites?
That's a great question. I think about that a lot, and there are many different parts of it that I love. I think Well, one of the parts that is always dear to my heart is the name of our farm. Ted's Last Stand gets a lot of comments wondering, who's Ted? And it's not my husband, as many people think. It's actually the name of our rooster. When we first moved here, the couple that had lived here before left behind a little white rooster and a little white hen. And they were so cute. We'd never had chickens before, so I named them Ted and Bev. And Bev used to fly up into the tree at night to roost, and Ted would sleep on our porch. Well, he was just a southern gentleman. I would feed them grapes and cut grapes in half, and Ted would take one half out of my hand and give it to Bev, turn and give it to little Bev, and then he'd come around and get one for himself. He was
my
the
goodness.
sweetest rooster. I thought roosters were mean. Well, not Ted.
Not Ted.
And he would guard her when she laid her eggs. Well, anyway, sadly, because we didn't know what we were doing, about 3 weeks after we had moved in, there was no Ted in the morning on the porch, no crow in the morning, and we found some feathers leading off towards the woods, and we assumed that a fox got him. So at that time, we started thinking about naming our farm, and that was one of the things I threw out. Oh, what about Ted's Last Stand? And Michael said, that's great, let's do it. So we've memorialized Ted.
Ted the rooster on your shirt.
And,
That's great.
And he just kind of reminds us of all the qualities that we want to bring to our business. To being kind, thinking of others first, taking care of things, sharing everything sharing what you have and what you know, and just community. So it's just a nice way to kind of keep those values in mind.
What's been the response to your book?
Well, locally, it's been great. The book hasn't been out that long, but just from the sales that we've had at our farmers market, I can say I've gotten really positive responses. Of course, these are all people who know me and are my regular customers, and they're very excited and happy to have the book. But it's available everywhere, and I'm really looking forward to getting the responses from people all over the country to find out what other women think about the book.
Well, we mentioned responses. If people want to contact you to talk about the book or whatever, where do they find you?
So I have a website, and I also am on Facebook, and I'm happy for people to contact me through either one of those, and that would be Ted's Last Stand at gmail.com, or just Ted's Last Stand. You can search for that on Facebook.
Well, if our viewers are interested in purchasing a copy of your book, where should they go?
Well, I always say shop local first. If you can go to your local bookstore, they should have a copy. I know in Charlottesville and in Richmond, they have copies. In most bookstores, you should be able to order it from your local bookstore. If not, available online at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And yeah, those are the main venues. So you can pretty much get it anywhere. It's also kind of exciting, I found out, going to be available in all of the airport bookstores. So if you're traveling and you don't want just that next novel, pick up The Woman-Powered Farm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So.
Well, it makes me proud that you're a Virginian, you're a woman, and you've conquered all of this wonderful stuff that you're doing.
I love that you said conquered, because I certainly don't feel like I've conquered. I think every day is a new adventure where I hope to make that next step.
If you could write a book about operating a chainsaw, building fences, planting plants so that they are prosperous, I think you've conquered something.
Well, thank you, Amy. That means a lot coming from you, because I know that you know about farming. So.
Well, a little bit. I learn as I go myself.
Right.
So, Audrey, thank you so much for having us out here today. It's a beautiful farm, and I really enjoyed talking with you.
Well, thank you.
We'll be right back. Spring cleaning doesn't have to be just for your home. Today, Mark Viette shares tips on outdoor spring cleaning when we go in the garden.
If you look around me at this beautiful garden, you don't really see a whole lot. I see a couple trees, maybe 3 small shrubs. The rest is all bark. Well, this is really not something I personally like to look at all winter long. Now, some of you may like it because it's nice and neat and crisp, but let me give you a few alternatives about when to clean up the garden. I sort of like to have the garden look more natural and to have stuff in it. It also protects the birds. So let's go look at some of the areas in the garden that we've left untouched, and the best time to clean them are going to be in February or March. Well, when you're trimming plants, sometimes we get a little over aggressive. So I'll mention a couple things, at least one, something that you really don't want to prune, or if you do prune, you do it in a very minimal manner. And that is tree peonies. Of course, regular peonies, they will cut back in the fall, maybe, September or October. But when talking about tree peonies, they form or produce little shrubs. Now, here, be happy if you get one that's 6 feet tall. I know in England and in Holland, they'll be 12, 15 feet tall. But this is a tree peony. So you can cut off the old pods. Again, I like to wait till February or March, but you would come in and remove some of the old pods. It is important, though, to really be careful for the buds, because the flower buds are right underneath those old pods. At the same time, you can remove some of the foliage. That's one that you really don't want to prune hard. I've had people in the past mistakenly prune these, and either they don't come back or they wait for 3 to 4 years for them to bloom again. There are some things that you can prune, like asters. Asters are best pruned, since there's so many different types. I generally say February or March. They still have the seed pods. Now, one of the reasons, some of you are looking at this, wow, that's kind of ugly. That's unattractive. But during the winter months, if we're trying to attract wildlife and birds to our garden, keep in mind that sometimes something like the Cooper's hawk will think your garden is a buffet, and they'll be in your garden day in, day out, looking to feed on your birds like cardinals, doves, finches, goldfinches. They'll feed on them as much as they can. So what I like to do is keep as much cover in the garden to give protection and camouflage for your bird. Once you're done pruning all these things, you also might find that you've got some daylilies and hostas. The other advantage to pruning these things or removing the foliage in the spring is you don't need to cut it. You just reach in and pull the old foliage, just like that. And we're just about done. Now, there is one more important reason I normally wait till spring to clean up the garden, and that is I don't want to have to clean up the garden 3 times. I don't want to have to clean the garden in the fall. When a few leaves fall, go through the garden and rake and clean it a second time. And if you're dealing with some of the oaks, like the pin oaks behind me, they tend to drop their leaves very late. And especially if you had a hard freeze early in the fall, the leaves stay on your tree longer. So I want to cut my work down to a minimum. I wait till February or March, cut back what I can in the garden, and then all you do is just come in. This is the fun workout time. And especially if you have mulch on the ground, raking leaves off mulch 3 times tends to remove a lot of the mulch. So I'm also conserving mulch. And when I'm done, the garden is clean, and I usually take all this refuse, leaves and debris, and I go ahead, put it in my compost pile, so in 2 years, I can go ahead and reintroduce this into the garden as a soil amendment. Again, cut down on all that work unless you're looking for exercise. I'm Mark Viette. Join me next time in the garden.
Taking a look at the ag calendar, the Memorial Day Horse Fair and Auction will be held May 25th at the Rockingham County Fairgrounds. Equine enthusiasts will enjoy this annual event featuring horses, ponies, miniature horses, tack, and more. The auction begins at 11 a.m. That does it for our show. Thanks so much for watching and have a great week. I'm Amy Rocher for Virginia Farming.
This program's brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau. Large or small, Virginia farmers work year-round to help put food on your table. And Farm Bureau works year-round to help farmers and all Virginians. Farming, it's all good. To learn more, go to vafarmbureau.org.